the American dream is is what everyone's going after in America, and we realize that the American dream is just the American dream. That is not the European dream. That is not the world dream. It's common to you go to work to pay for your house, and usually there's in a lot of large houses in the U.S. You buy your four wheelers, your boats, and all your toys, and then you go to work to pay for that stuff to only use it, 2 weeks out of the year. Because even if you get like a month of vacation, usually 2 weeks of that is spent either like around Christmas or just being able to maybe work on the house or something. And that's exactly what I was doing. Never went anywhere, never took any vacation to actually go somewhere. So it was a pretty big eye opener just to see what the goals are of other people outside of the U.S. and how to get out of that trap that we call the American dream.
Dream.
I don't want to offend anyone by saying that, but it kind of is a trap, and it's something that we strive to kind of change our view on how we live our life.
Welcome to the What Could Go Right podcast. We are your hosts, Erik, Orton.
And I'm Emily Orton.
And here we talk about personal growth and sailing. In 2014, we moved aboard a fixer-upper sailboat and bootstrapped a year sailing with our 5 kids, and it changed our lives forever.
We tell the whole story in our memoir, our book, 7 at Sea. On this podcast, we want to help you go from fear to freedom, one adventure at a time.
Hey guys, it's Erik. Before we dive into this episode, it's a little bit longer than some of our episodes, and it's worth hearing all the way through because it's a big, beautiful story, and I don't want you to miss it. But I know not everybody's going to make it to the end, so I do want to share a few important things here right at the top. One is I want to share some takeaways from this trip that I had to the Bahamas in August. It was a fantastic trip, and I just want you to hear from the people themselves that went, what kind of experience they're having on these trips. So I'm going to share one takeaway from one person. Then I also want to fill you in on what's happening with the upcoming sailing schedule. Basically, I'm sold out through this year and the first bit of next year. I'm going to Italy in a couple weeks, and that trip is sold out now. I'm going to Thailand in November. That trip is sold out. January and February are also sold out. But there are a couple things I want to put on your radar. First of all, I am adding actually a new trip. It's going to be December 2nd through the 7th. We're going to Sea of Cortez, Mexico. It's one of my favorite spots. It's a beautiful place. It's easy to get to. It's very affordable. And this trip is specifically going to be kid friendly. So if you've been looking for an opportunity to travel with your kids, I'll say under the age of 16, this could be the right opportunity for you. It's a beautiful place and it's easy sailing, but it's just gorgeous. So December 2nd through the 7th, Sea of Cortez, Mexico. So if you're interested in that, drop me a line. Also, I said that I was sold out for January and February. The only exception to that is I have one spot for one person on a trip to the Virgin Islands, January 27th through February 1st. It's a female spot. It's in a shared cabin. Again, January 27th through February 1st in the Virgin Islands. If you're interested in that, drop me a DM or shoot me an email. Also, although those trips are all sold out, we are going to the Virgin Islands again, March 10th through the 15th. It's going to be a beautiful time of year to be there. It's perfect if it lines up with your spring break or something else that you've got going on at the tail end of winter before spring really gets here. So March 10th through the 15th in the Virgin Islands. Drop me a line, hello@theawesomefactory.nyc, or just DM me on social. Also, we are going to be doing trips to Europe this coming summer. We're going to go to Greece, Italy, and Croatia. I'm not ready to put those dates out there just yet, but if you are interested in those, drop me a line. Would love to get you some priority information on that. So anyway, now that we've gone over that, listen to some of these takeaways from the Bahamas, and then we're going to get into our conversation with the Jacksons and how they've led a beautiful life traveling with their kids for the past 7 years in all kinds of formats, vans, boats, RVs, all kinds of stuff. So enjoy, and hope to see you aboard on one of our trips sometime soon.
Okay, so what was something that was just different than you expected, or something that you were worried about?
Just now, as I was pulling things out to Pat, and I was surprised. I planned to go into maybe some little town or something. I brought a little shopping bag or whatever. We really have not seen any other people. It's just been us. And that's been great and very lovely. Just lovely. so I'm, listening to people talk on 50th friend anniversary. And then I don't have any high school friends that I keep in contact with, really. One of the things that I have yearned for, we were so isolated because it was during COVID. I lived in Missouri for 2 years and came home knowing 30 people. And so I have felt disconnected often. There's a lot of little friendships that have continued. There's long-term friendships that reach up to other parts. And so I have felt lonely. And so I've really, when I just committed, I'm going to find ways to connect with people. And of course, this is one of those other experiences, to connect with people and learn new people. And it's hard to keep a group going, but wouldn't it be nice? Wouldn't it be nice to do this again and travel together as a group? So thank you. And Erik, it was lovely. Thank you for being who you are and inspiring us to be adventurous.
All right, today we're welcoming Rob and Tracy Jackson. They have 3 teenage daughters, Kate, 19, Ava, 17, and Chloe, 15. They've been married for 20 years. They both grew up in Utah, and they actually even have a cat that travels with them. They've been traveling for coming up on 7 years now. They don't currently have a house and have traveled in an RV for 2.5 years, a sailboat for 2.5 years, and have currently been in Europe for almost a year. And Rob works a remote job doing cloud infrastructure, and Tracy is a doula, but only when in Utah. So thanks for joining us today. Erik's going to tell a little bit about how you guys met, but first of all, just thank you so much for, dropping in from the UK.
Yes, yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thanks for being on. I know it's late there in Wales where you are. So guys, I thought it would be fun to just read how we met, because we met via Facebook Messenger March 6, 2019, and that was the week that our book 7 at Sea first came out.
Oh,
did you know that?
Okay, I knew it was March. I didn't remember the exact day.
So it says, this is from Rob. It says, just purchased your book from Deseret Book. Can't wait to read. Our family left Utah to go live in a sailboat, but taking a year living in an RV around the States first, also to help save. We have been working toward this for about 1.5 years now. Excited to read about your experiences. Thanks. And then we had a little exchange. Fast forward until
Since then.
Fast forward 5 years till July. It says, oh, hey, wow, I messaged you back in 2019. Time does fly. So quick recap, and this is going to be repeating a little bit of your intro. It says, we lived in a trailer for 2.5 years. We bought a sailboat, sailed that along the coast. I'm assuming this is the East Coast of the U.S.?
East Coast, yeah.
Yes, East Coast of the U.S. and the Caribbean for 2.5 years, sold that, and now we have spent the past 1.5 years bouncing around Europe. And then we talk about Italy, because I think we're all going to be in Sardinia, Italy around the same time later in September. Is that right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I'm pretty excited that we're going to have this conversation today, and that we might have the chance to meet in person late September. So we'll figure that out offline. But man,
where did this all begin? I guess is I want to start at the beginning.
Yeah, I don't think reading our book is what kicked it off for you. I'm sure you guys, that's just coincidence.
But I have to say, your book was amazing, and I found myself in tears multiple times. So recommend that book for anybody that hasn't read it yet, if they haven't. But I loved it.
Oh,
so thank you.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it, especially from someone who knows the reality, the ins and outs of actually traveling with the family, especially in small spaces, and kind of the emotional adventure that you're on.
Oh, yes. Thank you.
And hopefully those were good tears.
Oh, they are, but they're, I guess it's so close to home. It hits home because I know it, like you said, that it's, I was reading it as we were driving, and I was just crying, and I'd have to pause and stop and then cry some more. And I was like, okay. And I think it's because I'd already experienced that part of the sailing, but
well, we hadn't done sailing yet. This was the RV.
But it's that close living. I think, the RV is basically like a sailboat on land.
Rob was the one that first started, so you tell him how you.
Yeah, I was. We'd gone to Africa on a service project, and I just saw the way that other people live. We stopped over in Europe for a little bit and just saw how different people lived outside of the U.S. We've got friends in Norway and hung out with them as well. And so we got back to the U.S. and just like that, this isn't going to work for us anymore. I mean, it was a huge eye opener. and I'd really never had the desire to go and travel anywhere. I was just fine where I was, but that totally changed me. And then I was working. We have a rental, and I was working on that, and I just stopped to take a break, and I saw a news article. And I don't know if you may or may not remember this, but this was back in 2017. A family sold their house. I forgot what their names were. At Hall. Their last name was Hall. They lived in Eagle Mountain, Utah, and they sold their house and bought a sailboat and went to the Caribbean. And I just like, that's it. That's what I'm looking for. And so I text Tracy and said, let's do this. Send her the link. And then
Yeah, so my response to that, I remember I was in just the bathroom cleaning up and I had seen that text. And now I had an experience when I was younger that I drowned and that it had terrified me. And here it was, 25 plus years later, and I had just this fear that of water or just being in the deep end of the pool. And so for him to text me and say, "Hey, let's go sail on the ocean,"
Wait, this
to
is
me, I was
sounding
like,
oddly familiar.
I just was so terrified. And I just remember texting and saying, "No, that's terrible. I will die." I was texting all this. And then I stopped for a minute and I thought to myself, like, what if this really is what he wants to do? What if this is like his dream? Right. And I'd already done some things in my life that were kind of my dream and he'd helped me follow those passions. But now I was wondering, what if this is his dream and I don't allow him the ability to follow it because I stop him with my wants? And so I erased the text and I just said, we're going to have to learn how to swim.
Oh,
Oh, you erased your text to him?
yeah, that's a really brave move, and I feel that. And I mean, part of the reason that we co-wrote the book is because someone in the publishing industry said everyone's going to want to know what your wife was thinking. And I know some people read it and think, oh, this isn't the majority, but a few have said, like, basically that I'm such a pushover. Erik was so domineering and I just did whatever he wanted. But I had that exact same feeling as you. Like, he had already dedicated so many years to me being able to pursue my dreams. As a good partner, I wanted to kind of pull myself up out of my fears and let him explore that and not shut him down. I mean, he'd already given so much to me. So, yeah.
You're very kind.
Give him the chance to feel like he can have a dream, and no matter what it is that we're gonna support it and do what they did for us.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, it's huge. And it was huge. I mean, before he'd ever gone to Africa, I told him, because I had been there once before, and I had said, like, you're not going to understand until you go. You have to feel what I feel, because you're not going to ever want to get out unless you just fall in love with these people. And so I dragged him back there, and he just loved it. And he came back with that feeling he had to get out. And that's when it all kind of took off after that little thing that he read. But
I'm so curious, Rob, when you say this, you saw this different way that people lived either in Africa or in Europe while you were on this, like, what might be an example of something that stood out to you when you realized, oh, it doesn't have to be this one way, it could be this other way?
maybe you could talk about that stuff in Norway, when you saw the boats and you were looking at all the boats.
That's
Maybe cut that part out
that's
too.
part of yeah, like that's kind of part of it. But the whole thing about how people live differently, the American dream is what everyone's going after in America. And we realize that the American dream is just the American dream. That is not the European dream. That is not the world dream. You see, everyone, it's common to you go to work to pay for your house, and usually there's a lot of large houses in the U.S. You buy your four-wheelers, your boats, and all your toys, and then you go to work to pay for that stuff, to only use it 2 weeks out of the year. Because even if you get like a month of vacation, usually 2 weeks of that is spent either like around Christmas or just being able to maybe work on the house or something. And that's exactly what I was doing. Never went anywhere, never took any vacation to actually go somewhere, other than just kind of hanging around Utah for take a week and go out to the desert or something. And people in Europe, they've got, their houses are generally a lot smaller, and they have multiple houses in other locations of the world, not just in their home where they're home, and often these houses are owned by family. They're not just their houses, and they spend their time working towards actually going to these places and traveling, not just staying home and doing the 2 weeks. So it was a pretty big eye opener just to see what the goals are of other people outside of the U.S. and how to get out of that trap that we call the American dream. You know, I don't want to offend anyone by saying that, but it kind of is a trap. You know, and it's something that we strive to kind of change our view on how we live our life.
Well, it's interesting you say
Yeah.
that. Speaking of Norway,
Okay.
because my mother is from Finland, and I spent 5 years in Europe as a kid. My dad was stationed there in the military, and I would spend my summers in Finland, and saw maybe a different version of some of the things that you saw. And I never really thought about it until this conversation, that I just had been exposed to a lot of different ways of living, and so never really felt like there was just the one way, the American way, I guess, that what you're describing, because I grew up living the Finnish dream. As you know, and yeah, everyone lives in a smaller space. Everyone has a little shack out by the lake where you go and you spend as much time there in the summer as possible, and you only sleep inside. You're outside the rest of the time enjoying the sunshine, because the winters are so dark in Finland for most people. Anyway, so just that I think having an opportunity to see how other people live can open our minds to alternative ways, and then we get to choose what we want to do with how we're living our lives as individuals, couples, families, and you guys have gone bonkers in a good way.
I'm curious, Tracy.
Like,
Sounded,
yeah.
Tracy, like you had something else you might want to add to that.
Oh, I can't remember.
Oh, okay.
Oh, dang it!
Bring
Sorry.
it up if you come back again.
Remember what? I
Yeah.
can't remember what we were talking about, but
Yeah,
maybe
just
something.
yeah. Oh well.
Yeah,
So-
just some of the differences. I mean, even in little ways, like we went to Finland with our kids, I think in 2018, and they said, oh, in Finland, they don't scoop their ice cream. They take the square box of ice cream, they open it all the way up, they use a knife and slice it into squares and dish it in as
Cubes.
squares, as cubes.
It's Minecraft ice cream.
Yeah, and it's really just like one tiny example of how it doesn't have to be just one way. And for our teenagers, it was so helpful for them it helped them not get caught up in one cultural current of their teenage years or like high school years. They never thought, oh, there's only one way to be cool. There's only one way to dress. There's only one way to think about this, because they already knew.
Right.
Nobody
I feel
on
like
the other side of the world cares what you're doing. They're doing it their own way.
there's so many ways to do everything. And I mean, when Rob and I, when we had gone out to, I don't know, we were in Maryland or in Norway or somewhere where there's sailboats, that I remember Rob's conversation with me as we walked. He's looking at these sailboats and he's like, you've got to have like millions of dollars if you're going to have a sailboat. That would be so great to have one. There's, it would take a lifetime to be able to have a sailboat. And I said, well, do you really want to sail? And he said, yeah. And I said, hey, look, if you really want to sail, you'll figure out a way. And he was like, no, there's no way.
Maybe
And
if I
he-
won the lottery.
he was that one focus. Like there was one way of living a dream. It's his, American dream or whatever, that if he wanted to have a boat, and it's going to take so much money, or I don't know, maybe a lifestyle that you just got blessed with from your parents or whatever it is to be able to get into this. And, I just told him, I said, it's okay. You'll figure it out if you really want it. And yeah, he went home, and I think that night he was punching numbers and doing things. And then he goes, you know what? This is actually possible. I think we can do it. And I'm like, it literally took you less than 24 hours because you were really, really serious about it. You dove in there and you punched in the numbers and tried to make it work. But I think if we ever really want to do something, that we can, we just got to try.
Okay,
I'm going to put all of it.
I want to come back to this boat because I want to pick up the thread there, but I want to go on a quick sidebar because yesterday we bid farewell to some friends of ours. They're friends and coaching clients, and they are actually headed to Scotland for 3 months. Is that about right? And with their 4 kids. And they, when we started working together half a year ago, their mindset was just what you're describing. they were like, I don't even want to dream because it's impossible. We're so buried in debt, and there's no way. It's just discouraging to try and have a big vision for something.
Yeah, what's the point? Basically.
What's the point?
Yeah.
And
Exactly.
within a 6-month time frame, they changed their mindset. They figured out what they wanted. They got specific. They crunched the numbers. They figured it out. And they literally got on a flight yesterday to Scotland, where they have lots of sentimental connections and want to spend time. And they're going to spend 3 months in Scotland.
For their first time. They already have plans to return for longer.
They're already planning to go back. But because they changed their mindset and then they went to work on it, just like you said, you know, Rob figured it out in 24 hours. And then it doesn't have to be sell a business, get a 7-figure windfall, and then buy $1 million boat.
Yeah, I've seen people say that in our book too, like, oh, well, they were rich and they had all this. And I'm like, wait, you did actually read it? Because like we bought with financing and a cosigner, and then we sold it afterwards. And that year ended up being cheaper than the 7 of us stuffed in our 800 square foot New York City apartment, you know? So like, not really, but okay.
So let's go back.
Well, Rob and I
Go ahead, Tracy.
I was just gonna say, Rob and I were talking a little bit before this about how telomorph finance, like what we were saying on the boat, how much money we had at one point. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I'm talking about that. I don't know.
You don't have to share personal numbers if you don't want to.
No. It's fine, but I think it's more of when we get talking about the boat. We'll share that.
Oh yeah.
Okay, we'll keep it all in order. All right. So you
had the idea, you sent the text, you sent back a supportive text, and I hope everybody hearing this knows that really is the seed that gets planted, right? When someone you love shares the idea and you don't pick that seed up out of the dirt and throw it out, you know, you say like, okay, let's talk more. So then action was actually taken. Like, how did you get out on the road? What shifted?
It was a long process.
Yeah. It took us about a year to get on the road, you know, and first, you know, it's just overwhelming. Like we have so many things holding us down, so many things. And like, there's no way we can get rid of it. It's either going to be debt or your house or just responsibilities, just so many responsibilities. And within a year, we were actually able to figure everything out and make it so we could leave and not have to come back. You know, that included, you know, renting out our house at the time. And
he had a job, or he just started a business there in Utah, so you had to get that all covered.
Yeah, I've got a business in Utah that had to have someone kind of there. So I actually had a friend kind of help me out, and he's still to this day, he's still managing the physical things, and I manage the remote things. So that's still ongoing. But what was I?
Just a lot of things.
Work. Yeah. So it took me 6 months to find a remote job. And this was back before, you know, back in 2018,
before COVID.
Yeah. And like, it was really hard because everyone like, oh, well, I've worked from home. It's like, well, that's different than working remote. So people wanted to experience of actually working remote. So it took me I don't know how many interviews, and it was usually always the same. It's like, well, we want someone with more remote work experience. But I finally found a company that did that. Took a little bit of a pay cut, but it was absolutely worth it because now I get to work where I want.
And he actually got hired the day before we left. So the house was empty. The house was cleaned and done. And we were sitting in the office, and did you even have a table in there or a desk or anything? I don't even think so, but he was in there and he just said, I just got hired. And I'm like, good thing, because we're out of here, like regardless, you know, like we gotta leave. So
yeah, and the company that I actually had been working for actually ended up going under. So I was looking at calculating this with unemployment. Like we were going to be living in an RV if I didn't get this job with unemployment. So that's how close they're cutting it.
I love it. I love the faith and the courage that takes. And so, and when you say leaving meant moving into an RV for the foreseeable future. It ended up being 2.5 years, we now know. But can you talk about that transition of actually getting out of your house into the RV and driving away and kind of getting into that flow of a new life?
I want to say though that starting the RV was with the intent of going into a boat. So we were almost prepping for both at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
And so, you know, we were freeze drying food. We were going to bring a lot of freeze dried food with us on the boat for that part. So we had already gone through a whole months and months of freeze drying.
700 eggs of
700 eggs, but
freeze-dried
we had
eggs.
like chicken and I mean, you name it. We had everything freeze dried and prepped and ready to go. And we never heard anything online or anything about anyone doing that.
But
But we
such a
wanted
good
to know
idea.
because we had the ability to do it and we thought it'd be great. That's another story, but that's actually a long process was that. And then getting out of the house and finding places or getting the kids out of school.
Were you homeschooling prior to
And
this? Was homeschool part of the transition? Or
no,
starting homeschooling?
absolutely not. I never wanted to. And I never wanted to live in an RV either, ever. I had a friend who did it and I just thought it sounded like a terrible idea. And I thought I would never do
And
it.
then
But
like
then
6 months later, we were doing
we
it.
did it. But go ahead, say what you remember what you were going to say.
No, there was a time and where we were clearing out the house, getting ready for the renters move in. We were moving out, kind of the last stuff, and it just kind of hit me all at once, like, and I laid down on the floor and I can't believe we're doing this. Like, is this the right thing? Are we gonna really mess this up? How's work gonna? I mean, how am I gonna work? Like, how am I gonna get internet? You know,
Was
I
Starlink a
had
thing
no
back
idea.
then?
No, Starlink was not a thing yet. And so I spent a lot of time planning. Like, I would like look up cell towers, the frequencies the cell towers are running. I had thousands of dollars of equipment that I ended up having to purchase in order to make sure that I had the right equipment with antennas that were directional, omnidirectional, like all this equipment. So I'd make sure that where we worked, I actually had a good connection because I would do conference calls. So it was very, very important. And I think out of the 2.5 years that we were in the RV, we only had to move once. But that took a lot of planning in order to make sure that we had that. Starlink absolutely changes that, which is like we're on Starlink right now. And it definitely helps out because like we didn't know that they didn't have internet at the place that we're at. We arrived here only a few hours ago and they didn't have internet. It's like, all right, I'll just pull out Starlink.
I love it.
100%.
Love it. Yeah, so much
I'm
has
gonna shut that-
changed since because we went out in 2014 and Starlink was not a twinkle in Elon Musk's eye yet.
Yeah.
And or maybe it was, but it wasn't on our radar at all. And that was so nowadays it's so much more possible, so much more feasible to do this.
It's simpler.
And so I remember Emily and I did an interview with a television producer several months ago, and I was pleasantly surprised when we got on, and she was sitting in her RV, and her husband was out walking the dog, and you could see the woods through the window of the RV, and we're just having this conference call talking about a TV project.
She was on Starlink.
And she was on Starlink, and I was like, I love it so much that you're doing what you're doing, and I love that you guys are doing what you're doing. So so Tracy, you say, I don't want to live in an RV. It's the last thing in the world I want to do. 6 months later,
and I don't want to homeschool.
And you don't want to homeschool. 6 months later, you're in an RV. You're presumably homeschooling, and did you ever come to like it? And if so, I'm curious to hear that journey, either homeschooling and RV life.
I hope you're watching this on YouTube. Listeners, switch over. You got to see Tracy's face.
I say now, don't ever say you're not going to do something, especially if it's something that could be a good experience, because I have learned so much from all these experiences, especially doing things that I didn't feel comfortable with, doing things that were out of my comfort zone and have actually become the best parts of my life. So I feel like never say no to those good things, but just try them. And as far as the homeschooling goes, I mean, I was really excited about it. He laughs, but like I was really excited about it at first. I was going to find these curriculums, and the kids were young. I had a 6th grader, a 5th grader, and an 8th grader. And I thought, I can pull them out and I can find these great curriculums. And I've got groups around me that can be supportive. And we've got online church curriculums that we can also be doing at the same time. And I felt confident about it. And I felt like it went pretty good for the beginning. But when you're doing homeschool, you learn how to unschool your kids. And I think that's kind of hard if you don't really know how to unschool them yet, if you haven't learned that. So trying to teach your kids that it's okay to not have a teacher and to learn for themselves is huge. I still feel like sometimes I'm like, it's okay, look it up, and it's been years since then. I don't really super love homeschooling right now. It's harder because the kids are at a point that they're in high school, and so they need certain curriculum, I guess, or teachers to talk to and different things that maybe I didn't learn all of it, or I don't know. It seems to be harder for me, but Rob's taken over when it comes to math because I'm terrible at that. So I'm lucky that he knows what he's doing. But
And our oldest graduated. She got her GED last year, and then our second is working on her GED. She'll take that next year, and then our youngest, she's actually working on her high school diploma through BYU.
Studies, yeah. So she's been working that, and that's been really nice. They're more independent on doing that and not having to like rely on me for lessons and things like that. But yeah, I've heard them say, I don't feel I've got enough school, and I think it's okay. You've learned a lot of things. But go ahead.
It's true that they become more and more independent, especially when you start earlier and they start driving their own bus and they start saying, if I want to do this in the future, I'm going to need to have this and that in line. And we've seen with each of our kids somewhere between ages 15 and 17 that they kind of realize that this is their life and they are really actively engaged in what they want to have happen next. And just to your child's concern, like, do I really know all this stuff? Always a learning gap, right? Nobody knows all of the things. But what we found when especially the first one went to college, she was so concerned that she didn't know everything or that maybe there were learning gaps that she did what is sometimes called had the rookie advantage, where because she recognized she might not know everything, she opened all the syllabi, she read everything, saw what was expected. She made a calendar with like every single assignment for the entire semester so that she wouldn't miss anything. She just kind of, I won't say that she over prepared, but she prepared more than the average student coming in from anywhere else. And she ended up getting all A's and graduated with an outstanding student award. She became a TA and all those things. She was like, oh, now that I'm a TA, I realize I actually was totally on par with everyone else and was totally ready for college, but she was just nervous.
Yeah. I had one of my daughters say, I don't know very much. And, I didn't learn the things that all the other kids are learning. And I said, yeah, but can you tell me about, we're talking about Pompeii at the time. Can you tell me about Pompeii? Oh yeah, this, and she went off on what it was about. And I said, we're going there. Just like in a month, we'll be there. And she was excited. And I said, where did you learn about that? And she was just like, homeschool. Like, you're right. Even though you don't think you're learning things in homeschool, you still are. And it might have not been, the activity you wanted to do, but you got this. You can do it. And I think, they've shown that they like some parts of it and not others. So
just to jump on my homeschool soapbox for a quick second, I think rather than trying to transfer a certain block of knowledge to kids, the rising generation, because so much of the knowledge is going to be obsolete in 2, 5, 10 years. The most important thing is for kids to learn, how to communicate, right, how to collaborate, because then your potential to bring in new information and solve new problems is infinite. Whereas if you're trying to rely on a finite block of knowledge, you're doomed. So I could care less what my kids actually learn, as long as they learn how to learn.
Well, I know. I'll just say one more thing about it, which is this.
And then we'll get back to your story.
The same child, though, was getting ready to take the ACTs for college admissions and was also nervous that, hey, I haven't taken any of the prep classes. I haven't gotten any prep books. I'm just like going in there, going to take this test. And I said, in the prep classes, they're going to teach you all this vocabulary and you're going to cram and I said, but you have been reading classical literature since you were so young. You've read Les Mis twice. You're like learning the words in context in a very natural way. You don't have to cram at the last minute because you've been actually like educating yourself this whole time. And of course she did great. But she just did it the original way instead of the way we've created in the last 100 years of like cramming things in. And anyway, we're all for it. Okay, so
let's do some geography. So you moved into the RV, presumably in Utah, and then you went somewhere. Can you kind of
tell us about your journey?
Describe your route over the next 2.5 years, and kind of your daily rhythm.
Okay, I'm going to throw in something a little bit with that though, about some of the problems that we've run into,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
that's where it started the day we left.
Of course.
Of
That's,
course.
the week you
Yeah,
leave is
yeah.
like when everything goes wrong and you're like, did we make
So
the stupidest decision of our lives?
yeah. So
I'm suspecting.
we bought the truck, and we bought the trailer. We actually used a friend's. We bought the trailer before we bought the truck. We used a friend's truck to haul it to our house, and then moved into it. And I had never pulled this trailer before, so when we're ready to go, we just pulled up our truck, hooked it up, and left. Like, there was no trial run or anything. We just hooked up and gone. We made it about
I think it was not even
20
30 minutes though.
20 miles. So from
Yeah.
Saratoga Springs to Spanish Fork.
Which is
And
a very
the truck
short
was
distance for those of you not familiar with Utah geography.
the truck was overheating. We pulled over to Walmart, got
This is the truck you just
block
bought?
connector. Yeah, the truck we just bought. And it was a used truck. It had some miles on it. But we bought a kit to test for blown head gasket, and we're just there in the parking lot, and it showed positive for a blown head gasket, or at least exhaust gas is getting in the coolant system. So I'm like, oh great. I guess we're gonna be stuck here. And we wanted to get south because this was right before Christmas, like 4 days before Christmas. And but anyway, it turned out to be another part of the truck that we had to tear out, part of the emission system. But we had it all torn apart, replacement parts put in, and all done, and we were on the road the next day.
Wow.
So, but that's just, but that was almost a killer of our travels right there, and that could have been really bad if it was more damage. Anyway, so we left. We got back on the road, and we were driving south. We went to Texas, went to Corpus Christi. We had a reservation there, and I just remember driving down. We don't like the cold, and we just couldn't wait to get out of the cold. And I just remember going further and further south and getting warmer and warmer and warmer. And by the time we got to Corpus Christi, it was warm, and at night it was warm, and it was like permanent smile. Like, I just couldn't believe we finally made it, and it was great. I mean,
exhilarating.
One of the best days of my life was that day when we finally made it. Like, here we are, we're doing it.
Yeah. Finally, we had gotten out of the house and there. Yeah, it was one of those monumental moments for sure.
I feel like that's like when a rocket ship finally gets into orbit. You're just like fighting all this gravity to get off the ground, and it takes so much energy to get the first 10 feet, and then the next 100 feet, and then 1,000 feet, and 10,000, and then as you pull further and further away, the gravity gets less and less, and then you finally arrive in Corpus Christi, and it's 70 degrees at night. I don't know what exactly, but and you're just like, okay, this is the place I want to be, and the gravity is so light at that point.
Yes.
So you get to Corpus Christi, and then just kind of give us the overview of the next 2.5 years, because I'm sure you didn't just tootle around the South in warm territories.
I mean,
maybe just during the winters, but I'm sure you covered a lot of territory. So give us the overview.
Yeah. I guess just real quick to make it fast. So Corpus Christi, Galveston, actually San Antonio, because that's where my new job was starting. So I went and trained in San Antonio, then to Galveston, and then we went back to Utah in the summer, stopping at Nauvoo for a month. In
Illinois,
and then we were there back to Utah for 3 months, and then we left again. And where'd we go? That's when we went to East Coast.
Well, all in all, I guess we've been to how many states now? In the
43.
So 43 out of the 50 states, and we still are hoping to get back and just do those last few, because it's so they're so different. There's so many things to love about each state, and we get asked that all the time. Like, where's your favorite place that you've been? Is a huge question, and because we've been so many places. But I say, for what? Like, are you talking about food or people or something we've done or a hike? Like, there's so many things. And still yesterday I said Nauvoo was one of my favorite places. I loved the church history, and I loved doing that type of thing. So that was huge for us. But I think meeting all the friends and everything as you go through an RV lifestyle the friendships are so close because everybody is doing the same thing and you're so close and you want to get out and you want to see what's out. So you have campfires, you meet up, the kids have friends that are playing together at the swimming pool. Or, I mean, we made so many friends, didn't we?
Yeah,
I
we did.
just, and they're still our friends today. One of them was just messaging me today, and they're lifelong people that we'll forever love because of that experience. And it just continues on, you know, as we keep traveling, that we keep finding these friends along the way. This way of living now is not so much. We don't find a lot of friends because we're bouncing around so quickly.
Mm.
But yeah, boat life and the RV life are awesome for kids. And I know that a lot of people have really wondered, how will my kids do, and how will they have friends that are their ages that they'll be able to still make friends? The answer is absolutely yes. They're everywhere. Kids are everywhere. And if you want to have relationships on boats, when you have kids, your kids find other kid boats and you have relationships with those boats, and it's amazing. So yeah, don't be worried. If you're worried about taking the leap because you're worried about your kids and their friends, that is not something you should be worried about.
I literally just messaged one of my best boat friends, one of my best boat dad friends this morning, right before we got on this. And that was, we met 10 years ago. And so I want to echo what you're saying, Tracy, and I think also in our society, because I took a group sailing in the Bahamas last week, and they were talking about friendship. Most of the people on the boat were friends before they went, but they said, yeah, normally we'll get together and we'll go to dinner at a restaurant, or we'll get together at each other's homes for the evening, and you strengthen your friendship and you have a chance to connect. But they were saying, we're here on this boat for 5 days together. And what it did for their friendships in the course of that week is exponential compared to the 3 or 4 2-hour dinners that you have scattered throughout the year. And so, I echo what you're saying about the ability and to make friends, well, not the ability, but the circumstances that really lend themselves to great friendships, whether it's an RV or a boat. And so I'm glad to hear you say that, because that was our experience as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Are we good on the RV, or do you want to move on to the boat, or what?
Well, I'm curious, and if there's anything else that you want to say about the RV, I'd love to hear it. And then I'd love to segue into how that led to, I know you were using it to kind of prepare and save money, and then eventually move on a boat, which it sounds like, I'm assuming you bought a boat on the East Coast. Is that safe to say?
Yeah. So
Okay.
hurry and finish up with the RV. So we ended up on the East Coast, and everything in between. And then we headed down to Florida, where we expected that's where we're going to find a boat. So we spent the winter in the Keys, which was absolutely awesome.
Yes.
And then while we were there, we went to the Miami Boat Show, and then just as we were driving down the coast, we just, here's a boat for sale. Let's stop and look at it. And then we finally found one in Charleston. Found a Lagoon 400 in Charleston, and we ended up buying that in April. Oh yeah, this is so that COVID is starting to
the week that COVID starts, where everything gets shut down, is the week that we sign off on our boat.
Perfect.
So that's
it's kind of perfect if the countries will let you in to buy groceries when you're traveling around. Okay, let's hear what happened.
Well, we didn't know what to expect, and he's rolling his eyes, going, "What are we doing?"
Nothing had been locked down yet. It was just barely. This was like in March of 2020, and things were just barely starting to lock down, and we had no idea what was going to happen. And so we just didn't. When we signed that, we didn't know if we just made a huge mistake that with what was going to happen with COVID. And fortunately, we did, because boat prices just shot through the roof right after, and we wouldn't have been able to get into something.
It's so true, because suddenly everyone was like, oh no, I need to be able to go outside and
let's get out of here.
Yeah, the boats just all got snapped up. You're totally right. Good for you. I'm glad you got that.
We still definitely. But what were we talking about?
Oh, we were just
getting 20, yeah. And we still had our house at the time, and while we were sailing, like how many months into it? 2 or 3?
Well, this is when we were had to take the boat to up to Virginia, because to get out of the hurricane area for insurance. So we took classes there in Charleston, and then we had a captain take it up with us to Virginia, and that's a whole nother story that we can get into
That's
later.
a good story that people love hearing, but it's a little longer. Well, let's just say
I'm stuck on the fact that Charleston, in my mind, is outside of the hurricane box. But you're saying it's not? I guess
It's not.
Depends on who holds your
Depends on the
policy.
insurance company. Yeah. Yep.
Okay, because we had to get we just had to get like to Gainesville, Florida, or I think we had to just barely get into Georgia. So okay, that's just minor detail.
Ever since the hurricane or Maria and Irma, they changed. In fact, that was a problem. When we were researching this, we were looking at what insurance was gonna cost, and then after when we actually purchased the boat, insurance companies started dropping like flies. Everyone that said that they would insure us, all of a sudden they were not going to insure anyone anymore. Prices just went up, and so that was a struggle. We almost didn't get insurance.
Okay, so you headed north for insurance reasons, and then you basically, it sounds like you had the summer to explore all the East Coast, which is a great time to be there.
We had to go back to Utah again. We go back to Utah every summer or winter, just every year we head back for a few months. But then in that fall, so in November, we got back to the boat, and then we took it down the East Coast to the Keys, and we spent most of the winter in the Keys on the boat.
And we signed off on the house being sold while we were sailing.
Yeah.
So we're like sailing and signing our house away, and like, oh, we hope we're okay.
That's commitment.
It was,
we were actually running short on funds. Yeah, we were down to our last $1,000 when we left Virginia, and we were gonna have, that was it. That was all we had left.
Can I ask about that? Because you're working a remote job, so you have an income.
Yeah.
And so, but I'm assuming you put a lot into it to buy the boat, whether it's a down payment or you bought it for cash or what have you. But you still have income at this point. Is that safe to say?
Yeah, still have income, still working full time. We were going to have to live only off of the income that we had,
as opposed to a savings reservoir that we had prior to that.
Yep.
Okay. And another question before we continue. When you say, oh, we went back to Utah, is that like, are you jumping on a plane and everyone's flying back? Are you driving the RV back across country, leaving the boat anchored somewhere or at a marina? And then
we never fly. We always drive.
Except when we're coming to Europe.
Why do we do that? Is it just because it's too expensive?
Cost.
Okay.
Yeah.
We just, well, it was almost so easy just to live the way we were living. I mean, all of our things were there. Our cat was with us, right? And so taking him with us everywhere we went was awesome, and he loved it, and he learned to stay right with us.
Well, and also,
that was amazing.
We still had the RV, so it's our home.
Yeah, you have a place to live when you get there, and you spend the summer.
Sure. Yeah.
If we flew, we wouldn't have a place to stay. We wouldn't have all of our things. I mean, we just go wherever we go, our stuff goes with us.
And when we drove back to Utah, we would stay at like the Utah marina, the Utah Lake.
Yeah.
And so we still were living there. Yeah. If we went back and we didn't have it, we wouldn't have a place to live. So
that's a nice marina. That's a nice place to live.
What is a nice place?
The Utah Lake Marina. That's where you'd park your RV.
Yeah. It's lovely. Yeah. So, and the kids would have fun on the lake there, and that gave them fun times to have in Utah with friends they knew and things like that too. But
so you're living.
So we signed off.
So you're living on you're on your boat now. COVID is getting into full swing, but you've managed to get it insured, and you're selling your house, and funds are shallow at the moment.
Yeah, and we signed. We just left the Chesapeake and going down the coastline, and we signed it right when I still had cell service, and we signed it right there, heading down to Charleston. We were going to get to Charleston with no money.
Yeah.
Other
Perfect.
than So we're living the dream. This is what living the dream is.
Yeah, it's commitment.
You're living how many times did you guys hear that while you were out, by the way?
We heard a lot. Another day in paradise, while you're fixing the engine, or it's super high humidity, blazing hot, no shade. Another day in paradise. But yeah, knowing you chose it does make it paradise.
Okay.
Right? And I'm like, there's always a lot of other things that you don't really see. They're not all good. And they'll be like, oh yeah, boo-hoo for you. You're sailing. So
there was a lot of jumping in and crossing fingers, hoping things would pan out. And we still do that today. That hasn't changed.
Lots of praying. There is so much praying going on because
because you say there was so much praying. I know that's the same for us, how we move through life. I'm just curious if you've felt a spiritual current as you made these decisions to change your way of life?
Yeah, absolutely. At the beginning, my mom said, I said, I just don't know if I should be doing this. And my mom had said, Tracy, did you pray about this? And I said, absolutely not. Like, God is a guy. He's going to say sail. I mean, what guy just don't sail? I'm like, I don't want to hear his answer. I'm just gonna have to go with what Rob's saying, because I was like, no, I'm not doing this. But yeah, that was just me being weird. But at the same time, we've had a lot of this spiritual experiences along the way and a lot of blessings. And I actually started writing a little bit of book. Somebody wanted me to start writing a book, and it's not done by any means, but just filling it with purely just the blessings we've seen along the way. And it's amazing, and I love it. And I'll tell people stories, and they'll all have them crying, because that's how I feel. These are so close to me, and without our constant prayers, we surely would have not made it anywhere in this whole track of craziness that we've chosen. But prayers play a huge part, and that is something that we wanted to talk about, some of the blessings later on, if you guys still have time.
If there's time.
Yeah.
That some of the blessings, but
I think we'll have time.
Well, let's make sure we circle back to that.
Yeah.
Because the things that I would like to make sure we cover is, you've sold your home, you've committed, you've got your RV parked somewhere, I assume, or maybe you sold that as well. But you're on a boat.
Not we stored that in Virginia.
Okay, so you have a kind of a place to come back to for that. But you spend the next 2.5 years. I want to talk about your 2.5 years sailing, and then you transition over to Europe, and you're I know you're not in a boat or an RV, but you're on the move a lot. And so those are the two blocks that I want to make sure we talk about, and then we can circle back to some of the blessings that you're talking about. So, do with that what you will. Just start walking us through your time on the boat. You're heading south, right, so I assume.
Yeah, on the boat, it wasn't a constant 2.5 years. With hurricane season, you got to come back wherever you're covered. And so we came back to Virginia in the at the end of the winter, or by June, whenever you have to have it out. But we spent that winter in the Keys getting the boat ready, because it wasn't ready for offshore. When we bought it, they said, ready for offshore sailing. No, not even. Whatever. That's one thing. Like, it doesn't matter what they say about the boat, what the surveyor says. You're going to buy the boat, and there's going to be so many more things wrong than you could have ever thought. That's just how boats are. Mm-hmm. We spent the next 3-4 months getting the boat ready to go offshore, added solar, lithium batteries, and just kind of the works in order to do to be completely off grid at that point. And on our way back to Virginia, we did go to the Bahamas. And if we didn't do that, there probably would have been a mutiny, because the Keys isn't really a great place to be if you've got a family. I mean, if you're a couple or single and you want to go hang out in the marinas and stuff in the Keys, then great, but not particularly great for a family.
It's a bit of a party.
Not
scene.
A lot of not a lot of good anchorages.
Great fishing though.
Good, yeah,
absolutely good.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, thankfully we were able to spend some time. We spent 3 weeks in the Bahamas on our way back, and met some great people, and those are some of the people that we still keep in contact today. And yeah, if it wasn't been that, just kind of changed the whole view of the family, of like, okay, this is what it can actually be like. And that was a real big eye opener of the possibilities. A lot of people, they'll just sell the coast and not make it to something. The Bahamas is fairly easy to get to. Like, you sail there in a day.
It's a day sail. Leave early in the morning and you're there by dinner.
Absolutely worth going to, and it changed our outlook on everything with that time.
Were you in the Abacos, or do you remember where you went?
We did the Abacos. We were actually going to head to the Exumas. Weather kind of prevented us from doing that. Plus, there's a Facebook group, Kids for Sale, and they said, "Hey, you're Bahamas. Like, we've got a group of kids, a flotilla going up to the Abacos. I know you want to go to the Exumas, but come join us." Mm-hmm. Perfect. Like, best. Yeah,
that was the best decision ever. And we didn't know what to think first, but the kids, they just connect like they're 3-year-olds. I know that sounds weird, but you know how little kids, you get them to a playground and they just are automatically friends. Mm-hmm. Boat kids do that. They have this mentality. If they don't find friends right off the bat, they don't get them. they have to find them. They have to talk about, they have to be brave and just be outgoing and just go out there. And they do. And they do a great job. And I think that's helped our kids break out of the window of feeling like they can't just talk to anyone. And now they're not afraid of anyone. They are awesome. They're super outgoing. And I like that they've done that for their kids.
And I'll say something else to that. So the person who contacted us, they had been sailing for several years, and they had been sailing solo with just their family. And because of COVID, they couldn't go to the places that they normally were going to. So they went ahead and was like, all right, let's just hang out with some other boat kids. And they said it was a night and day difference. They were kind of upset that they hadn't figured that out earlier. But anyone looking to sail, go to where, and you've got a family, go to the places where other boat kids are. Don't worry about necessarily the location. Go find other boat families, and it's so much better.
Yeah, we'd swap kids, and one of the guys on the boat was letting the kids sail his boat, and he was teaching them how to sail. And, we'd all go together as a group, but these kids got to have adventures of their own without having to be stuck with us. And we could see where they were, and we could still talk on the radios, and they were safe and happy with people we knew, and great experiences. Wonderful people.
You guys are making my heart sing.
So fun.
So yeah,
and you guys know the boat community is amazing. You know how that is.
Oh yeah,
tight knit people are amazing. Yeah.
So how far down the chain did you go? How far down I'm assuming you then said, hey, now that we've been to the Bahamas, we know what it can be. Next season, where did you go?
We went almost straight to the Bahamas. We wanted to do the Salty Dog Rally, but our with insurance and everything, we just couldn't do that. That's where you leave from the Chesapeake and just go right to the Caribbean.
With all the other boats.
But it's a pretty long sail. And so we had to go down the coast. Took us a bit longer, but then we went through the Bahamas, and then we didn't do what's called the Thorny Path. I'm sure you're aware of the Thorny Path.
I'm not.
We took the so the Thorny Path is where you go down through the chain, like through Turks and Caicos, along DR and Puerto Rico to get to the Virgin Islands.
I guess
that's
I
really
sailed
hard
the Thorny Path and didn't even know it.
Yeah.
It's if you time it just right, I hear you. It's great, but for most of the time, it's just you don't have the long enough weather windows to be able to make that without some pretty adverse weather. But if you stay above a certain latitude, which is about the same latitude as say Spanish Wells in the Bahamas, and you stay that far north, you can go east pretty far,
and then cut straight
without
south.
having the trade winds. So you don't have to wait as long, and we finally got approval from our insurance, and we spent 7 days. We left Georgetown, went north, actually sailed north to go south. So we sailed north to a higher latitude, and then sailed east for I think like 3-4 days before we actually started sailing south again. And then we just dropped right down into the U.S. Virgin Islands.
Nice.
7 days later, we arrived Christmas morning in 2022.
Yeah,
Christmas morning.
I'm a huge like holiday
21.
person. I want to have the holidays be something that the kids can have as like something normal that we normally would do at home was going to happen on the boat or in the RV. And I'm a huge Christmas tree person. I want to have Christmas trees everywhere we go. And so I had adapted the boat to have a Christmas tree around the pole, and we had lit it up with Christmas lights. And they got to watch their Christmas movie on Christmas Eve as we pulled in. And Santa had his magic working all the way, and it was amazing. And yeah, I mean, the kids woke up and they didn't know the difference between a boat Christmas and an at-home Christmas, just because the magic was still there, I think. But it was amazing. Yeah. Does that make you tear up? You look like you were tearing up. Yeah, it was really amazing. And I tried to do that. I brought little like Valentine's box of hearts, those chocolates. I had hid them under the bed in the boat, and then on Valentine's pulled them out like, look how cool I am, right? And it was really neat. It was like that little thing. And here we are in the Dominican Republic, and I'm going, I've got these chocolates for everybody, and they just thought it was so neat. So, if that's something that's big in your families, then consider doing that, because it really was the icing on the cake, I think, for a lot of the kids, and they still talk about it. So
That's so fun.
That was neat.
So
Go ahead,
oh,
Rob.
I was going to finish kind of like with the rest of that season.
Please do.
Since you
Yeah.
had another. Okay. So we were kind of trying to race time to get to hang out with some friends that we had. They're actually also from Saratoga. Turns out that our kids actually went to school together, and they didn't even know that until they like joined up on a
They were in the same
seminary,
school
online
class.
seminary,
Mm.
and they're like, "Oh yeah, so we're going to be on a sailboat." And then my daughter, so like our daughter's like, "Yeah, me too." They didn't even know. So we actually became really good with friends with them, and have spent almost every New Year's with them ever since. They're in Texas now. But we met up with them in the Virgin Islands. They'd done the whole loop of the Caribbean, and we met up with them in the Virgin Islands, and then sailed back with them. That's as far as we made it.
So we weren't actually able to get into the BVIs because we had our cat, and because of vaccinations and things like that we had to have at the time of COVID, he would have had to have his vaccinations 2 days before we went to the BVI, and we had been sailing for 7 days.
7 days.
And so we obviously hadn't done that, and we can't get off the boat to get that. So I mean, it was just catch-22. We're stuck.
Yeah.
And so we just ended up.
Well, you can't go right to the BVIs. You have to get COVID tests. And they won't issue them there. So we went to the US VIs, and we had to get the COVID test done there to submit into the BVIs. While standing in line, because there's a huge line to get the test, we got COVID.
Not all of us, just the two of them. So then they brought it back to the boat. I mean, we were fine on the boat without all these people around, but yeah,
it was pretty minimal. It was like 3 days. It was Omicron at the time, and it was like 3 days, and I couldn't dive for like 3 days because I was stuffed up. But
they weren't letting anybody even get out of your boat. So on Christmas Day, you weren't allowed to get off and even into the water, and so we just had to stay aboard our boat with our friends right next to us. So it was like Merry Christmas, that type of thing.
Unforgettable.
All right, and then from there,
it was bittersweet, I guess. It was nice to have them there, but
we spent some time in the U.S. Virgin Islands. They're at St. John, and then we worked our way west, did SVIs, Puerto Rico, and spent a month in DR at a marina there. That was actually pretty nice. And then we hopped back and went to the Bahamas, and then we spent the next 3 months in the Bahamas. And we finished out our season in the Bahamas. That was just that. And then we met again more friends and more boat families that we again still stay in touch with.
Yeah, our friends that were sailing back with us that we had met actually went on to go sell their boat. And we decided we wanted to go to Bahamas, and they didn't want to wait and stay with us. So we turned and went to the Bahamas, and actually found some of our really, really good friends that we've kept in contact with even more. Our kids have flown out to California to go stay with their families, things like that. They're still young, I think, but they didn't care. Now they feel confident that they can fly anywhere by themselves, and they're just, the world is their palette. They can just paint wherever they want. But yeah, they've definitely been close friends with those people that we just found during that time there at the Bahamas. But that's where they learned how to spearfish. And since a lot of the friends that they had were boys that were really interested in spearfishing, they took off, and they'd go out and get dinner for us every single night. I mean, I hated fish to start off. I sounded like the worst person for this experience for anyone. Like, I couldn't swim. I couldn't, I didn't like fish. But actually, ocean fish taste completely different than a landlocked fish does. I mean, I was used to fish in Utah where you warm it up and it smells like fish in your house. But an ocean fish, like when you're cooking it, you can't even smell it. Like when it's really fresh, you can't smell that fish.
Cooking up a nice snapper or a grouper, or even better, a hogfish.
Mahi. We had caught 16 mahi in one day. 16 as we traveled, and that was wild. I don't think that's normal.
On our first year back coming from the Bahamas, we hit the Gulf Stream and took that most of the way back, and we just must have been in a pod because in 24 hours we caught 16 mahi.
Wow.
I hope you had some freezer space.
Yeah.
We had freezer space. We had our little
vacuum sealer.
Yeah. Genius. We're vacuum packing all of it and throwing it right in the I mean, we brought that meat home to Utah so everybody could try freshly caught mahi. It was
best
amazing.
Burgers. Wow.
Yeah.
And those hogfish, they are delicious.
Oh, they're yes.
We had some great grouper burgers. Kids still talk about those too.
All right.
It
So,
was amazing.
in the interest of time, just tell us, like, because first of all, I'm glad you got to finally sail the Exumas coming up from the DR. I'm assuming you did.
Yeah.
Gorgeous. And then how
Yeah.
did you get from the boat to bouncing around Europe, where you've been for how long now?
About a year almost.
We had
back and forth because we go back to Utah.
We had a miscalculation on Schengen. We didn't know that Norway wasn't part of Schengen because it's not part of the EU. So we ended up having to come back early last year because we had to leave Europe.
I just want to, for the people that aren't savvy to this, you can be in the EU for 90 days with that as on a tourist visa, right?
Yeah, the European Union.
Yeah, then you have to leave and be outside for 90 consecutive days before you can come back in. And so most of Scandinavia, until recently, and the UK are considered outside. So you can kind of bounce between those two parts of Europe and use your time wisely, I guess.
Yeah, but you can't. But Norway in Scandinavia is still part of the Schengen, even though they're not part of the EU.
Yeah.
They are Schengen. That was my mistake.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
We thought we spent 2 months.
3.
We spent 2 months.
I thought it was 3 months.
We spent 2 months in Norway, thinking that wasn't counting against us. It was. So we were about ready to head we were in France at the time. We were about ready to head to Switzerland, and I realized, like, oh, wait a second. No, they're still part of the 90 days.
We had just driven from what, it was a southern to northern or northern southern.
Yeah, we just driven from Paris to the very southern border, and then I realized we
So
have to leave. We have to go to the UK
like
now.
5 hours, yeah, and we all just barely got all of our luggage in, and he says, "Guys, we got to put it all back in the car, and we got to drive the 5 hours back up north, and we got to get out of here." And we were just like, "Are you kidding us? This is insane."
Yeah, we were actually 10 days over.
Yeah.
I'm sure they
So-
we won't tell.
your secret's safe with us and all of our podcast listeners.
No, that
Well,
that happened to us in a country as well, and I was so nervous leaving, but it was not an issue when we left.
We ended up getting a lawyer and having him write us up a paper in French, so we could, if they gave us a problem, we can give them the border, kind of explaining the situation. We're only 10 days over, so it's like, they're not going to do it.
Even though she said they probably wouldn't do anything, even if they read it.
You were prepared.
Yeah, we were trying. We were reading everything about it. It says you'll have, what was it, 15? You'll be banned from Europe forever. You'll have 5 years in prison for each person that has gone over.
That's like worst case scenario type stuff.
Or you will. There was one more. Was it?
No.
Anyway, they were just so bad that it was like we were all just so nervous. So we went and had this lawyer and did all this paperwork, and turns out we just were able to get through.
All right, so now go back to the question. What was the question about Europe? Sorry.
First of all, how did you get there? Did you sell your boat and then go to Europe? Just kind of that transition briefly.
Yeah. So the reason why we did Europe is we got back to Utah and prices of houses are just like, nope, can't do it.
Crazy.
Can't do it. We sold. Unfortunately, we sold our house about 6 months too early. I mean, it just shot through the roof right after we sold it. I mean, you look at what the the graph shows of what is like we sold it and then boom, it just shot up. Like, oh, come
But you're
on.
living a great life, so
Yeah. So it's absolutely worth it. Would not trade that for anything. So we thought it's like, you know what, prices are just too high. They might come back down. I don't want to buy anything right now. So it's going to cost us this much to rent here. We can go. I can work remote, so let's just go live someplace else. So like, let's go ahead and go to Europe. And so that's kind of how we got on that. And we actually bought tickets.
Sold the boat or no?
We were looking. Yeah, we were trying to sell the boat.
Okay.
I guess I just want to say that I like what you're saying. That seems so counterintuitive that you decided to sort of van around Europe because it would be cheaper than getting a house in the States.
It used to be cheap. COVID really played a role in the cost of like Airbnbs. Stuff that like I look back to see what prices were for Airbnbs are double than what they were before COVID. So it ended up not actually being all that cheap, unfortunately. But we are
homeless.
we do have the experiences.
I was going to say, since we're homeless, we're paying about as much as we would for a home, right? Living out.
Right.
So
if
we
you were
ended
to
up
buy an
selling
overpriced home in Utah.
Yeah.
Right.
So we ended up selling the boat in October of 2022. That's right. Yeah. And then less than a year later, we were in Europe. No, the following April. That's right. The following April, after we sold the boat, we were in Europe. And then we've just been traveling around. Now, something different that we did is we actually ended up buying a car, which is very difficult to do, very difficult. And so, if anyone out there is looking to do this, like trying to rent a van, like you can rent a car pretty cheap, but renting a van is just absolutely out of the question. They wanted, like $10,000 a month or something for a van. It was way out of price range. So we ended up buying a van out of Germany. You can get an export plate for up to a year out of Germany. But then that expired, and turns out there's actually a company in Germany that will use their address as your address, and you can actually register it. It's titled in your name, but registered in their company's name. So you can actually legally register it. You can own it and register it. And so that was kind of
They were
nice.
so excited to sell to Americans.
Nice.
They took a picture with us. They were like cheering.
Like, we've
that
never
they
done
had
this
sold
before.
the car to Americans.
You have to
How
send
are
us
your-
their contact information, and I'm dead serious.
How are your friends getting around? Did they say how they were driving around? If they're going to be here for 3 months in Scotland, did they say?
I don't know.
Oh, we'll have to ask them.
I don't know. We'll figure it out. We'll find out.
Yeah, that's interesting for people that do want to have a long term, so they're not paying for Ubers and things like that.
I know.
That's a better way.
Yeah, we bought in New Zealand. We just bought an old minivan off of their version of Craigslist, and they made it really easy. The insurance was like $9 a month US. 14 NZD,
Okay.
but 9 US. Yeah. Anyway,
So New
we were
Zealand
like,
makes
this
it
is
easy.
crazy how easy it was, but way cheaper than renting for sure.
Yeah, definitely not easy in Europe.
Mhm.
All right. Well,
In fact,
we'll have to get over that hurdle when we go do our long-term trip there.
Yeah.
So you're just kind of bouncing around Europe, and that's been 2 years now?
Well,
No, that's been almost a year.
so April of last year,
So-
and then we had to come back for a while and into the U.S. Wait out the Schengen, and then now we're back. And we actually had to leave again, which is why we're in the UK, because we had the 3 months, and we'll be back in next week. So next Thursday so it's Thursday today. So next Thursday we'll be going back into the EU again.
And that's when you go to
So-
Italy?
Yeah.
All right,
Sometimes,
we'll talk
we
about
have a
that
lot
afterwards.
Oh, sorry. Sometimes that people have asked me a lot of times, like, how do we do this? What are we doing? And, we go from Airbnb to Airbnb, and you never know what's going to be there as far as what to cook with, what the beds are going to be like, if there's sheets, if there's, a broom. I mean, there's just things that don't end up being at these places. And so along the way, we have just grabbed a broom and grabbed some tongs and, the little things along the way, and managed to somehow fit all of these things, our 3 kids, both of us, in this van. This is a regular sized van.
About the same size as like a Dodge Caravan.
Mhm.
It's just a van,
Perfect.
but we have all of our camping gear. We have a cooler that keeps all of our food cold, not to mention all of our food that's not.
Yeah, camping
Cold.
chairs, camping stove, tents, sleeping bags. We have all the stuff for
We have
camping
4
as well.
blankets, we have pillows, we have all of our clothes and everything fits meticulously. Rob has videotaped how we stick everything in there, and we've got a pot on the top that has some things in it, which has also been a struggle as far as like, what's the word? Clearance for getting into places. Europe, they tend to have a smaller clearance, so you don't have enough room with a big van. But
Like
we've been
parking
able to make it,
garages.
Yeah.
exactly, like
Yeah.
pulling that off sometimes, not for a garage, but like, have we ever had to pull?
Garages.
Yeah, but have we had to pull it off for a garage?
No.
Not that I think of. Usually, you can park out on the street, but yeah, if you ever do something like this, you're gonna need to check your parking first to make sure. Even with an RV, though, you need to make sure that your routes are
clearance,
following, your clearance, because we got in a jam with that once.
Yeah. We got
That was-
stuck up Niagara.
that was
We had to
funny.
actually call 911 and have the highway patrol come and block traffic so we could back out.
It was on a curb. There was no sign. We actually called and they said, "Are you at this one specific spot?" Because there's not a sign there. I guess everybody got stuck there.
It's
in
like,
their
that's a
RVs.
common issue.
But yeah, anyway.
But for the Airbnbs, sometimes we don't even know, like we'll leave an Airbnb and we don't even know where we're going to stay for that night,
Mm-hmm.
and we'll figure it out on the way.
We're just booking it as we drive. Yeah, that is very, very common. Like every day. Yeah.
We've
And,
done a
you know,
fair bit
when-
of that, and it can be fun, but it can also be exhausting.
Yeah, but
Yeah,
anyone
it's
listening,
just-
you can totally do that.
Totally. You don't have to know where you're going to stay the next night. You can just be in your car and figure it out en route.
Mm-hmm.
Our families would like when we had our flight schedules, like, well, where are you going to stay when you get there? Like, I don't know. We'll figure that out when we get there.
Yeah, and I've heard a lot of people say that they'll plan a year ahead for an adventure, say like in Scotland, that they'll plan it for a year ahead. And for us, it's like a daily plan. And so it's really broken down. Like I told Chloe, our youngest this morning, I said, wake up, we're going to Wales today. And she just stayed asleep. And I thought, like, this isn't a big thing in their life where they're like, we're going to a different country, right? But we've almost been to how many countries today?
Been to 29.
Today made the 29th country that we've hit this in a year. Yeah. And
Not in a year, since
6
we
years?
started in 6 years.
Mm-hmm.
So our kids are used to going to these different, I mean, there are a lot of them in Europe anyway, but they're used to this transition. And so Rob and I were talking about how we've actually ruined our kids doing this because they don't have that sense of like, this is special, or this is like a unique experience, or wow, we're going to a new country or something like that. It's just something that they're used to. So that's, to consider. I think if you, I don't know, the magic is a little bit lost in a sense. There's always the great things that you find when you get there, but the idea, I guess, of just doing something new like that.
Well, I think,
I don't know.
I want to give you some comfort, hopefully, as a kid who kind of grew up that way, seeing a lot of countries when I was young. And I think going back to what we were talking about at the outset of our conversation is that they get the benefit of moving through life with a different lens. They're not going to be locked into one way of doing things. And yeah, there may not be as much delight and surprise and expectation of going to a foreign country. That may not hold so much mystery for them, but it's also not going to hold so much fear. They're going to be able to move through the world in a confident way, enjoying what's in front of them. And they might say, oh, you know what? I actually don't need to go to another country to find the stuff that actually makes me happy. I know that if I'm in the UK, it's going to be different food. It's going to be a different kind of outlet in the wall. It's going to be a different currency. But the things that actually make me happy, my friends, my family, whatever it is, I can have that wherever I am in the world. And so they might be less swept up in this idea that somewhere else is going to solve their problems. Somewhere else is going to make them happy. That they're going to.
I like that.
Anyway, that's my take on it.
I know our kids, they just try to see how long they can go before anybody finds out about our travels, before it comes up in conversation, and they immediately are branded as like weird or wealthy or like some kind of other they're just like, oh, just try not to mention it. see how
I've noticed
it goes.
that a lot of boat people do that, and we've talked about that we just try not to bring it up.
It's like other people don't get it.
Right? Yeah. It's a different lifestyle, completely different. And so when you choose to live that, you almost set yourself into, I don't know, it's like a group of aliens, you all understand each other, but no one else gets you. And that's really what it feels like, for sure.
And I would say for our family, I feel like that was a huge plus because of the things that we went through together. It made such a deep family culture that, it's okay if only we get it, because we're the ones who are trying to connect to each other. It was like us and our kids. And so that's awesome. I know that Rob has some other obligations tonight, but I really would love to circle back to some of the blessings that you have been cataloging from your journey and maybe wrap with that.
I think it's a good way to close up, and then Rob will let you get back to your time zone
Yeah,
work.
I mean, well, I can stay as long as needed, but so it's, unless you've got to go, I can always extend.
Well, I think this, anyway, we'd love to hear this part of it for sure, but don't feel like you have to scrimp. So take as much time as you need to share this part, because this is, I think everything else has been so beautiful up to now. And I trust that this will be the gold.
Yeah. And we've talked about some of the challenges, and this is the, how it's worth it.
Yeah. And there's just, I understand there's no way that we can cover all the 6 years of your travel in a one conversation. So since there's no way to do that, let's just, I know that I'm looking forward to hanging out with you guys in person, but let's go ahead and But
Sure.
we'd love to hear
Yeah.
these takeaways that you have.
Yeah. So I told you that I didn't know how to swim, that the girls didn't know how to swim. And um, when it came down to it, I had taken swimming lessons back in Utah and was on my 9th swimming lesson. I was too afraid to let go of the edge of the pool to go down just to bounce off. And I just remember thinking that was my last lesson before we left to live on the boat. And how did I feel good about this or whatever? But as time went by, I was able to get scuba certified and totally overcome that. I know I was in the deep end for like, you have to float for 15 minutes, you got this. And yeah, I did it and I overcame it and I can jump into the ocean. I still have to wear my goggles. It gives me that little bit of comfort, which is strange, but I can swim and I don't need a life jacket and I can just do it. And so that is something, a big hurdle that I came over and a huge blessing, but I had to, I would cry in the bath, just like, what am I doing? Why am I doing this? And I would have these mental breakdowns. And anyway,
And now
that
you'll
was
even
huge.
now you'll even jump in and swim with sharks.
I swam with sharks. I have jumped off in the ocean without Rob seeing to go swim to him, which I probably shouldn't have done, but I did. And it was great. Yeah. And I've swam over very deep water that I couldn't even see how deep. But anyway, that was one of the huge,
Amazing.
I don't know if you'd call it it was a blessing, but it was more of like something that I overcame.
Like a breakthrough.
So yeah, amazing. Were you going to say something?
No, I'm trying to think of like determine the difference between like a blessing and a highlight.
Both say a highlight.
Either or. We're not going to be picky.
I guess one thing that she always brings up, like, I was working when we were in the Virgin Islands, or not the Virgin. We were in the Bahamas, and I was working part-time at the time, and I was on a break, and I'm like, all right, I'm gonna go take a break, and I'm just run and go jump in the water.
He's screaming from in the water. He's like, this is the best lunch break ever, and he's down there with his snorkeling stuff. He's ready to go snorkeling, and he loved it. And I never really saw him as happy as I ever did. Even to this day, he is the most happy on a sailboat. I see him smile like he's a kid. It's the best part, of being married to him. I think is seeing him that happy. It is awesome for that. Yeah, that part of it. But as for like a blessing, though, we've had so many. I'm going to say so many. Well, we've had one really, really scary incident. And that was that first sail that I was telling you about, that long story. But we actually thought we were going to die at one point.
Yeah, this is our first time in open water. We're doing a 4-day
sail.
This is the moving from Charleston to Virginia.
Yeah, it was
with a skipper.
Right. And it was awful. It was
we
absolutely
weren't
horrible, and it should have ended our sailing right then and there.
Right. And anyway, the story is so horrible, and we were really frightened for our lives. And I just remember feeling like when that was over, I had texted my cousins because we were on this group chat, and I was just saying, this is what happened. I really had to have the thought of all of my family drowning in the water and watching them. And I said, I just don't know how I should feel about this. Like, do I want to go on? Like, why would I want to go on? This is horrible. And one of them texted me. I asked them, should I do this? And one of them texted me and said, Tracy, this is their first time out. Every sail is not going to be like this. You've got good things coming. Just try again. And, we want to see your adventures and follow along with you. And the next one said, just come home. Don't keep doing this. You don't need to have this in your life. It's terrible. Just come home. And then she follows it with, just kidding. You need to stay out there. You need to keep going. And I was like, my thoughts were, they have no idea what it's like to feel like you're literally, I had written my last letter. I knew, like, I had gone from being frightened and scared to being accepting of this is how we were going to die. It had turned into that, where I was just saying, please just let me, praying, please just let my kids not suffer as they drown in front of me. Don't let them see me suffer. That's what I had turned to. So it was pretty dramatic, but after that whole experience was over, to get off the boat and be like, how do we get through this? How did this happen? that was a huge blessing that we were able to even overcome that. But then we never ever had anything as dramatic or horrible as that since.
We are much more conservative than our skipper was, and we wouldn't have. We actually asked to go into port for the night because of the conditions that were up ahead, and he's like, "No, we'll be fine." And he'd been doing this for 50 years, and he said afterwards, like, "Yeah, that's in my top five worst sales ever
Holy
in
cow.
50 years."
It was so bad.
And here, this is our first time. Oh, it's just
bad call, Captain. Bad call. But
bad call. And I'm like, we will not make that type of call. In fact, we wouldn't have if it was our decision. He
had reasons that he told us that he did take that sail, and they were legit reasons for him. I mean, I probably wouldn't have put another family through that for the reasons that he said, but I think that he had good enough reasons. I'm glad that day's over.
Yeah.
Every day grateful. But on another note, we were sailing once. We were on our dinghy, which is a little boat attached to the back of your boat. If you listening, you don't know what that is, but we were on this little dinghy, and we were going through the ocean with our friends. They were spearfishing, and our girls had met up with their guy friends that were spearfishing with their dad. And as they like took off, we were following their wake behind them, and we saw something floating in the water. And it was we got up to it and picked it up, and it was the dad's wallet, and it was like flopped all open and completely soaking wet. But here it was, all of his money and
ID,
driver
cards,
everything.
Yeah. And here it was sinking, and we had grabbed it, and we're like, oh, he's gonna not believe this. And we get up there and just said, does your boat feel lighter? And he's like, what are you talking about? And I said, your wallet went missing. And he just couldn't believe it. He said, I would have left tomorrow if I couldn't find that. We would not be staying here. He said, I would have torn my boat apart. And the hours and hours we would have had looking for it, and I would have never found it. And we had months with them. They were some of our best friends. And it was like, oh, that little blessing of just being behind him, because we weren't going to go out and go spearfishing that day. We were going to stay back home, and we decided to go. And to even turn around and go back and look for, what was that thing in the water? Because we had run over it and had to go back initially. So anyway.
Now, what about blessings for family? Like what would you say? Like, I mean, we've lived in close quarters for 6 years, like 300-400 square feet of each other for the past 6 years, with me working and the kids doing school.
He's thinking of blessings for family. I'm thinking of blessings of safety, because we've had so many like weird things happen. But what do you mean? Are you
tell us some family blessings?
Yeah, or like some things you've learned or takeaways.
I mean, I don't know, like we've known that we now know that we can stand each other for
for a long time.
Because a lot of families, I know they would they struggled with that. All of a sudden they go from this big wide open area, and then now they're all confined to this small area, and it's a struggle. You have to definitely learn how to live together, and I don't know how to really explain.
Well, we used to talk about, somebody said that there's more divorces from people that live on boats because they're not used to living next to each other so closely, I guess.
I can imagine that.
Becomes a crucible. Yeah.
But we really, I think, overcame it with the RV part, and then moving to, and not to say that we didn't get frustrated on the boat, because I found myself trying to learn how to steer the boat while he's throwing on a second anchor during a storm while we're, have boats dragging near us and things like that. And it was overwhelming, and I was in tears, right? I mean, that's real, but not that I was mad at him or anything. It was just overwhelming for the family at different times. But I make it sound terrible, like I have all these terrible. There are not that many terrible experiences. Granted, we did it for 2.5 years.
Tracy's going to make it real for people.
But it is true that it is a true gift to be able to learn how to get along with each other in small spaces. People always ask how you did that, and a huge amount of respect and empathy has to grow up to make that livable.
Definitely.
Yeah, why don't you each share, I don't want to put too much pressure on it, and so I don't want to say your top takeaway, but just what's a takeaway that comes to mind for each of you, from the past 6 years? And we know that your travels and your life is not over, so it's not like it has to be
the conclusion.
The conclusion. It's not like a lifetime achievement award, but I'm just, up till now, what do you say? Man, I'm so glad that we did this because.
I think it's hard to really pinpoint it to just to one
You know
thing.
what? I can think of something though. I always have something to say, right?
Go
No,
for it.
I think that we have been talking about how a lot of people don't choose to live this type of lifestyle until they're older. You know, they spend their whole lives earning money and earning money, whether it's to pass on to their kids or to maybe have fun when they're older, when they retire. The way that Rob and I did it, we started off pretty much with nothing, and we dumped a bunch of, what do you have, 401k or whatever, into spending that time with our kids when they were young. And so now that we've spent that time, now they're growing up. We had one that moved away. She went back to Utah. We've got the other two here now still, but they're getting to the point where they're starting to move away. And we spent those younger years with them doing the things that we wanted to have, these memories, and just have these experiences with the kids. And now we were talking about it yesterday that if we can grow up and earn the money back and have money to be able to be better off when we're retired, and still be in a good position there, but have all the memories and have the kids have all these memories and have pictures. And we did it backwards.
Mm.
And I would say that's the best thing that we took away, is that we did it backwards. We did it different than people's mindset think this is how I have to do it. No, it's not. Do something different. Do what makes you happy. But what if you died, a year from now? You've wasted it all by working.
I love that. How to live backwards.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd have to agree with that. You can't get that time back. You can always make money. It comes and goes, but time you absolutely cannot get back. And we financially, this was very draining on us. Still is. We lost a lot of potential earnings, a lot of realized earnings. But that's fine. That's fine.
Yeah,
we'll figure out that when the time comes. But this time with our family is the most important time. It's part of the reason why I did this. I was working 60 hours a week. I do a lot of work on cars as well, so I was spending a lot of times in my garage working on cars, and I didn't really see my kids much. And then I'm like, this has got to stop. We got to figure this out. And so we've had the last 6 years of just almost every minute of every day of 6 years with our kids, and it's such a wonderful, great experience. And there's no money in the world that you could buy that for. You cannot buy that.
I'll first of all, thank you for sharing that. And I think that is so beautiful and so insightful. And we've had a similar experience where we've just spent money and used money in 401ks and other things like that in a backwards way than it's intended. And sometimes I ask myself, as the father in this family, as the primary provider, am I doing a good thing for my family? And Emily and and forgive me if I don't mean to speak for you, but we firmly believe that the only investment that always goes up in value are memories. Mm-hmm. The only investment that always goes up in value are memories. And the fact that we feel grateful to have made so many memories early, and we continue to make them. And you guys have this treasure trove of memories that more than any 401k is going to just grow and grow and grow and yield dividends for decades in the future and generations in your family as your kids move out.
It's a legacy.
And so, you can look at the money part, but I think we've come to a similar conclusion. You can keep making money pretty well into your 50s, 60s, 70s if you want to. But this time with our kids was so precious for us, and I can tell that it's been precious for you. And that's why I was so eager to talk, because I'm just huge admirers of what you're doing, how you're doing it. And we appreciate you carving out time on a late Thursday night in Wales to talk with us and share this, to hopefully inspire other people to, not necessarily do what we've done or what you've done, but to do the thing that feels good for them, their families, their kids, wherever they're at in their journey.
To strengthen their relationships and do what matters most and not be so scared. We always love to end our podcast related to that fear, moving past fear, to say, what could go right.
It's important to always remember that God does his work last. His last minute. You're never going to be ready until last minute, and just jump and make a choice, and then he'll help you right at the last minute.
I love it. I love it. In fact, yes. What could go right? Thank you, Emily.
Thank you, Tracy and Rob. It's been such a delight to just get the tip of the iceberg of your journey.
Thanks for having us. This was really a great experience. Thank you.